That single extra cup of oil you just poured into your lawnmower, it's currently turning your $3,000 engine into a frothy, bubbly death trap. While most owners worry about dull blades or dead batteries, this one common maintenance error can turn a healthy engine into a scrap metal pile in minutes. It's an easy mistake to make, often fueled by the best of intentions, but it's one that could cost you hundreds in repairs right now. Now, walk out to your garage and take a good look at your riding mower. It looks tough, right? Ready to slice through grass like an absolute beast. Well, I hate to break it to you, but right now, your engine might be standing on the edge of a metaphorical cliff, and you are the one pushing it. Because the last time you checked or changed your oil, you likely committed a cardinal sin. You thought to yourself, "Hey, a little extra oil can't hurt." It can, in fact, hurt. That mistake ends with a loud clank, a cloud of white smoke, and a massive repair bill. The reason this is such a big deal comes down to how virtually every modern riding mower engine is designed. Whether it's a Briggs & Stratton, Kohler, or Kawasaki engine, most are four-stroke engines with a crankcase that stores oil in a sump beneath the crankshaft. That oil isn't just sitting there waiting for an oil change. It's constantly being splashed or pumped onto critical moving parts to create a microscopic film between metal surfaces. Once that lubrication system gets disrupted, wear starts accelerating almost immediately. Today, we are saving your engine from your own good intentions. Here is the exact oil mistake that is quietly choking your mower to death. The brutal science of why it happens, and how to fix it before your next mow. Alright, let's talk about how liquid gold turns into an absolute engine assassin. Most people think engine oil just sits there happily in a little pool at the bottom, minding its own business. In reality, oil has one of the hardest jobs in the entire engine. Every time that crankshaft spins, metal parts are moving against other metal parts thousands of times every minute. Without a microscopic film of oil separating them, friction skyrockets, temperatures shoot up, and components start wearing away incredibly quickly. But lubrication isn't oil's only job. It also carries heat away from moving parts, helps trap tiny bits of dirt and metal so they don't circulate endlessly through the engine, and even helps seal the gap between the piston rings and the cylinder wall so the engine can maintain proper compression. That's why the amount of oil matters, just as much as the quality. Too little oil means those protective jobs stop happening. Too much oil creates an entirely different problem. This is also why manufacturers don't simply tell you to pour in any oil. You'll often see recommendations like SAE30 for warmer temperatures or 10W30 when mowing across a wider temperature range. Those numbers refer to the oil's viscosity, basically how easily it flows under different conditions. Pair that with the correct API service classification, and you're giving the engine exactly what it was engineered to run on. And when they see the oil level looks a bit low, they top it off. But instead of stopping at the line, they keep pouring. Because logic dictates that more lubrication equals a happier engine. Right? Wrong. Inside your riding mower's engine, there is a heavy metal part called the crankshaft. It spins thousands of times per minute to keep your mower moving. As the crankshaft rotates, its counterweights and the connecting rod travel through the crankcase thousands of times every minute. On many single-cylinder mower engines, the connecting rod even has a small dipper that scoops oil from the sump and throws it around the crankcase. This is known as splash lubrication. Larger V-twin riding mower engines often use a pressure lubrication system with an oil pump to deliver pressurized oil directly to the crankshaft journals and bearings. When the oil level is perfect, the crankshaft clears the oil pool safely. But what happens when you overfill it? The spinning crankshaft slams directly into the extra oil pool. It acts exactly like a giant, angry kitchen whisk, whipping up egg whites into a meringue. Just think about drinking through a straw. If your drink suddenly turned into cappuccino foam, you'd suck in mostly air instead of liquid. The oil pump has the exact same problem. Oil pumps are designed to move liquid, not bubbles. Once the oil becomes aerated, pressure starts dropping. Bearings that normally float on a thin cushion of pressurized oil suddenly lose that protective layer. At first, you might not hear anything. Then tiny scratches appear, and bearings begin wearing faster. Temperatures even get hotter. Keep mowing long enough, and those tiny scratches can turn into spun bearings, scored cylinder walls, or even catastrophic engine failure. Within a few minutes of mowing your lawn, your smooth protective oil is completely whipped into a frothy, bubbly, milky mousse. And guess what? Oil pumps cannot pump air bubbles. Mechanics call this oil aeration. Instead of supplying a solid stream of lubricant, the oil pump or splash system is now dealing with air-filled foam. That foam collapses under load and can't maintain the oil pressure or lubricating film needed to keep bearing clearances protected. Instead of riding on a thin cushion of oil, metal components begin making direct contact, dramatically increasing friction and heat. No, really, your engine parts start grinding metal on metal because they are being lubricated by literal foam party bubbles instead of oil. So, how do you know if you've already turned your expensive mower into an expensive blender? Fortunately, your engine will start screaming for help pretty quickly. You just have to know what to look for. Symptom number 1. Your lawn suddenly looks like a 1990s rock concert. If you crank the engine and a massive billowing cloud of thick white or blue smoke erupts from the exhaust, you haven't elected a new pope, nor is it the 4th of July, so keep the celebrations down. That is just the sound of excess oil being violently forced past your piston rings and burning inside the engine combustion chamber. Your mower is literally choking on its own fluids. Normally, the piston's compression rings and oil control ring keep engine oil where it belongs. But excessive crankcase pressure caused by overfilling can overwhelm those seals. Oil slips past the rings and enters the combustion chamber, where it burns alongside the fuel. That's what creates those thick blue-white clouds coming from the exhaust. Symptom number 2. The engine simply refuses to turn over, or it coughs and dies after 10 seconds. This happens because the extra oil has traveled up the breather tube and completely soaked your paper air filter. The breather system exists to vent pressure that naturally builds inside the crankcase as the piston moves up and down. Under normal conditions, only vapor passes through this system. Overfill the engine, however, and liquid oil gets pushed through the breather tube into the air filter housing. Once the paper filter becomes saturated, the airflow into the carburetor drops significantly. The engine starts running rich, sometimes combustion becomes less efficient, and the mower may surge, stumble, or refuse to stay running. An oil-soaked filter is basically a giant gag rag over your engine's mouth. It can't breathe, and if the oil fills the cylinder completely, you hit hydrolock, a fancy mechanical term for your engine is now a very heavy, useless block of metal. Hydrolock happens because air compresses, but liquid doesn't. If enough oil enters the cylinder while the piston is traveling toward top dead center, something has to give. Usually that's the connecting rod, which can bend or snap under enormous force. If you notice your air filter looks like it went swimming in a deep fryer, stop cranking the key immediately. You are one turn away from snapping a connecting rod. Interestingly, running too much oil and running too little oil often produce opposite problems that end in exactly the same place, an expensive repair bill. When the oil level drops below the safe mark, the crankshaft and connecting rod can no longer splash enough oil around the engine. Bearings start starving for lubrication. Friction increases dramatically, and temperatures rise. That's why checking the dipstick before mowing only takes 30 seconds, but can save thousands in repairs. It isn't about obsessing over maintenance, it's about catching a tiny problem before it becomes a catastrophic one. Alright, let's pull your mower back from the brink of disaster. If you check your dipstick and the oil level looks higher than a skyscraper, do not panic. Fixing this is surprisingly simple. Option 1 is the clean and easy route. Steal a turkey baster from your kitchen. Don't rely on guesswork. Every engine has a specified oil capacity listed in the owner's manual, usually somewhere between 1.5 and 2 quarts for many riding mower engines, though it varies by model. Always confirm the level using the dipstick rather than assuming an extra splash won't matter. Stick it straight down the oil-filled tube and suck out the excess oil until the dipstick line behaves itself. Just don't use that baster for Thanksgiving later. It's not the type of oil your turkey needs, unless you enjoy that flavor, of course. Option 2 is the messy route. Place an oil pan under the mower, loosen the drain plug, let a tiny bit spill out for 3 seconds, and tighten it right back up. Check the level, repeat if necessary, and you are good to go. Once the oil is back between the 2 magical dots on your dipstick, change your air filter if it got soaked, and your engine will happily live to fight another lawn. But before you pat yourself on the back, overfilling isn't the only oil mistake that destroys mower engines. Some owners never change the oil because it still looks clean. Unfortunately, color tells you almost nothing. Every time you mow, the oil collects microscopic bits of metal, soot from combustion and contaminants that slowly reduce its ability to lubricate. Others grab whatever bottle is sitting on the garage shelf. Car oil, leftover motorcycle oil, even ancient oil that's been sitting open for years. Small air-cooled mower engines often operate hotter than many car engines, and manufacturers recommend specific oil grades for a reason. Using the wrong viscosity won't necessarily destroy an engine overnight, but it can increase wear over time, especially during very hot or very cold weather. Another mistake people make is assuming all engine oil is interchangeable. Walk into any auto parts shop and you'll see conventional oil, synthetic blends, and full synthetic oils sitting side by side. That doesn't mean you should grab whichever bottle happens to be on sale. Conventional oil is perfectly suitable for many mower engines when it meets the manufacturer's specification, while synthetic oils generally offer better resistance to heat and oxidation during long mowing sessions. The important thing isn't whether the bottle says synthetic, it's whether the oil matches the SAE viscosity grade, an API service classification recommended by the engine manufacturer. Using a premium synthetic with the wrong viscosity can be just as problematic as using cheap conventional oil that doesn't meet the required specification. Most riding mowers use air-cooled engines, rather than liquid-cooled engines like you'll find in a car. Instead of circulating coolant through a radiator, they rely on cooling fins cast into the engine block and a flywheel fan that pushes air over those fins. That's why these engines often run at higher operating temperatures than automotive engines. Because of that extra heat, the oil has an even tougher job. As the oil ages, it gradually loses viscosity, and its additive package begins to break down. That's another reason manufacturers recommend changing oil at specific service intervals, instead of simply waiting until it looks dirty. Good maintenance isn't just about changing oil. Check it before every mow. Replace it according to the manufacturer's recommended engine hours, not just once a year. Keep the cooling fins free of packed grass so the air-cooled engine can shed heat properly, and always use the correct viscosity for your climate. These simple habits dramatically reduce oil breakdown and extend the life of your engine. If this video just saved you from a $400 mechanical tragedy, do me a favor, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next stupid mistake.